Mr. Minister, Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, it's always for me a great privilege to be back into the Kingdom. And I would like to thank the National Competitiveness Center for giving me the opportunity to be back. Although I have to say, whenever I'm back in Riyadh, I have the feeling I am always back in a different city because it is changing so quickly. When we are looking at competitiveness, you have a fantastic plan, the Vision 2030. But meanwhile, the world is also changing, and the rules of world competitiveness are changing all the time. And what I would like to do this morning is to share with you some of the ideas behind what are going to be the new rules of competitiveness and how we could adapt to them and what it means for countries and for companies. I think that if we are looking at the one idea behind this presentation would be the following: our life to all of us would be a lot easier if the world would stop interfering with our strategy. The problem is that it interferes all the time, and this was very well illustrated by this man, Karl von Clausewitz, who said strategy is the evolution of a central idea through continually changing circumstances. And I think the faculty to adapt to those changing circumstances is part of competitiveness, and we are going to look at that. We are in a world of volatility. Very often you open the TV, and on the TV you see the following: breaking news, 9 o'clock, share rise in early trading. Second breaking news, 10 o'clock, shares plunges on news that it rose in early trading. And we are in this situation where probably we are not quite sure anymore what is a good news and what is a bad news. And we are going to try to see what is good news, what is bad news in terms of competitiveness. We are always speaking about the economy, but in fact you have three economies. You have number one, a material one, which is very well understood, very well measured. We have more than 100 ways to measure the economy. You have another economy, which is a digital one. It is less understood, and it is less measured. Why the shares of Tesla have multiplied by 2 or 3 during the past 6 months, still maybe a mystery. And then you have the financial sector, which is well measured, but sometimes a little bit misunderstood. And I think the three types of economics are to define competitiveness. We have a sea of troubles coming in. A lot of issues are in perspective. We have geopolitics, number one, of course, protectionism, Brexit, which is far from being finished. We have energy costs, exchange rates, volatility, of course, in interest rates, energy transition, digital transformation, climate change. All this is coming to us and will affect competitiveness and affect the way we are going to manage competitiveness. On the top of that, we are in a world where we have new governance. There is a pressure to change the way we manage things in companies and in countries. And this new governance aspect is made of more transparency, increased activism everywhere, and of course, a lot of opinions. It's a world of opinions, it's a world of perception, and we have also to manage the perception that people have. This presentation is not going to be doom and gloom. It's going to be positive, and I think we should keep in mind what John Kenneth Galbraith said. He was the advisor of President Kennedy, and he said one day, you know, the only function of economic forecasting is to make astrology respectable. And somehow, I think we should keep this in perspective and see what happens in the future. So let's start by the traditional way of looking at competitiveness, the economy, and let's look at the economy. You know, the mixed signals are, if you are looking, you know, the results for the Kingdom. This is Europe, this is GDP growth, 12 months period of time. It's a relatively weaker economy than before. If you look at the United States of America, growing 2%, so far so good. The problem is going to be with Latin America. You see Mexico already in recession, and of course some countries in Latin America getting very weak, like Brazil, a little bit Chile, and of course the problem with Venezuela. And when we are looking here about Asia, we start to see a slowdown with China, 6%, with India, 4.5% growth. So the world economy is really balanced between, you know, growth and a weaker perspective. But what is interesting is that here, this is 12 months period of time. If you want to see in which direction it is going to go, you look GDP quarter over quarter. And then quarter over quarter give you a sense of direction. And of course, these are weaker numbers, which mean that people start to be a little bit concerned. And you see the US is still okay, 2.1%. Europe in general, 0.9%, quarter over quarter. But we still see already 2 countries in recession, South Africa, and of course, Hong Kong, minus 12%. This is, of course, before the crisis now with the coronavirus, and this may get a little bit worse. So we are not quite sure in which direction the economy is going to go and what will be the tipping point. What is certain is that one of the critical aspects to define in which direction we are going to go is going to be the private consumption. This is what really is going to make the difference. And when you are seeing in the US and Europe, 60–70% is private consumption. You see China, I have put the one for the kingdom. And basically what we are seeing is that private consumption is still strong, but it's strong on certain period of time during the year where you have the big discount, where you have the big sales, like the one on the shopping festivals of Alibaba and the rest. So it's going to be a roller coaster, and it's going to go up and down, but it will define the future. From that, you can make an anxiety index. You can try to find out the perception, and the perception are very well given by the financial sector. You can see here how currencies have performed compared to the dollar during the past year, and whenever the dollar is becoming stronger, it means that people are worried. And on the other side, when they are worried, gold is increasing, the Swiss francs is increasing, and the Japanese yen is increasing. It means nervosity on the market. And of course, there is oil, but oil is also influenced by the political situation, but oil also has been increasing in price. And finally, there is negative yields, which mean basically the bonds, and this is going up and down. When I was finalizing this presentation last week, it was $8 trillion. Today, they have announced it has been going up again to $13 trillion. When people are worried, they go in sovereign bonds with negative yields. And we see it again. So it means there is nervosity on the market. Now, the question, of course, is, are you worried about the situation? And here you have the little man who is saying, relax. My broker says the economy will bounce back. And the little guy is saying, but I am your broker. So basically, we are in a situation where everybody is nervous because we don't know in which direction it's going. And when you are looking at the economy, one of the first big questions is going to be, for the material one, protectionism. Now, when you are looking at protectionism, we are out of a period of 30 years of open world, globalization. But now what we are seeing is a lot of countries which are closing to the markets. We start to see a lot of protectionist measures here and there. Now, the big revolution is that we are not speaking about protectionism for job protection, but protectionism because of national security. The US is using a piece of law from 1962 which says you can protect your market if your national security is at stake. When you are looking at the debate on Huawei is not closed to the American market because it is killing jobs, but because it's a question of national security. Same story with the debate with the UK and Huawei. This is completely different because it means that it is politically motivated now, and it's very difficult to discuss from country to country national security. And now we have a pause with the deal with China. It's not the end, it's a pause. And what people are worried is that now that maybe the US has a small agreement with China, they will turn to Europe. And they will say, we have a problem with German cars, we have a problem with luxury goods, and they apply protectionist measures to Europe. And this is going to be a problem because the next important issue is not tariffs. Tariffs, when tariffs are increasing, companies are passing the price to the customers. The real issue about protectionism after tariff is going to be closing markets. If suddenly your market access are being closed, if suddenly, for example, the US say you cannot import German cars anymore, then the damage is much bigger. or if China says we block a certain number of foreign companies. And this is where people are worried, the market access. And we should preserve the market access at all costs. It means that in order to look at this protectionist measure, we need to look also at where the products are coming from. The nationality of a product is something important. Piece of steel, piece of aluminum is simple. I know where they come from. But if you are looking at your smartphone, if you are looking at your PC and all this, and you try to define the nationality of an iPhone, which is made of 25 different components from countries different, it is becoming very difficult. We don't know the nationality of these products. The same if inside you have Android, which is free, which people are not paying for, what is the nationality of this product? Again, we are looking now at the possibility of where you define nationality not from where the product is coming from, but actually what is the added value inside the product. For example, today, 37% of the export of China to the United States of America are made by American companies operating in China and shipping the product back into the US. 41% of the export of Mexico to the US are made by American companies exporting back to the US to themselves. So actually, it's very linked. And we know that if you start protectionist measures like that, actually you hit yourself in the foot. You shoot yourself in the foot. Everybody knows it's not a zero-sum game. Everybody knows it, except one person, of course. But it's a very dangerous game. We think that companies are going to manage their competitiveness in trying to secure a more closer approach, and this is well illustrated here. We outsource it to India, and they outsource it to China, who outsource it to Korea, who outsource it to Mexico, and the lady is adding, and then they outsource it back to us. And this is what's happening. I think companies are going to manage their competitiveness much closer to their home base. And there is a word which is going to come again and again in globalization, and this new word is going to be decoupling. Decoupling means we are in a global world, however, we want to be more self-reliant. China, the United States of America says we want to protect our market and be more self-reliant. And on the other one thing, it will mean duplicating. If China says, all right, I want to be less dependent from the United States of America, then I have to develop my own technology. And they are forcing to develop to invest $2 trillion to catch up with the technology of the US and to be independent from the US technology. And almost everybody is going to go in this direction. This is a very difficult game because it means that for many countries, for many companies today, one product could feed the entire world. Maybe we will have only fragmented opportunities. Maybe it will imply more cost because it could mean more different standards from one region to the other one. This is a risk we are confronting now. And of course, when you are looking at the economy like that, you have to ask yourself, are we having the right tools to know what's happening? And I want to show you two examples. The first one, this is a GDP. This is a calculation, don't look too much at it. It was invented by this man, Simon Kuznets, a professor in the US in the 1930s. Basically, used the GDP for the war effort. Now, the problem with the GDP is two things. Number one, it only calculates the added value. It doesn't tell you about the quality of assets, the value of assets. It's only about added value. And in a country like the Kingdom, you are very much depending on the quality of your assets. It doesn't apply in the GDP. Second, it only accounts for a financial transaction. If there is no financial transaction, then it is not in GDP. And this is very important. If, for example, you have the update of a software, it doesn't appear in the GDP. We don't know if it is positive or not. This is the first problem we have. The GDP is a very bad way to measure the economy. The second one is a radar screen, is inflation. If you look at inflation, these are the numbers. You know where you are in the kingdom. Most of the countries today are under 2% inflation. This is those who have a higher problem, above 3%. And these are the countries with a serious problem of inflation at the very top, Argentina and Turkey. But when you are looking at inflation, this is the real numbers. But the European Central Bank, they did something else. They looked at how people will perceive inflation, and what they have discovered is this is the average, which we see during the period 2004-2015. It's about the same level as we have now. But when you ask people, what is the level of inflation? That was the answer. They felt that inflation was much higher than in reality. And in certain countries, like Italy, it went from 1.8% to 14%, because people are sensitive to certain products, like food, like rent, and this is where they will define their perception of the economy. So we have to manage perception also, because this is very important for the future. And then the way inflation is calculated. Somebody in an office collects data, and every month they produce an inflation number, and with this inflation number, companies adapt to it. But actually, this is not the way it's working in the new economy. In the digital world, in Amazon, the prices are changes every day. They are changes many times a day. They are changes almost every hour. And this creates a completely different situation where the companies are price makers. They don't adapt to prices, they are making the prices. So this is going to be a completely different thing. Now the question is, can we do differently? And yes, you can do differently. If you take, for example, the new technology, you have space technology, Space Now. It's a company, they are using satellites to see what is the economic activities of various countries, to see how the factories are performing. You can see that from the sky. A company called PriceStats is using your phone numbers, is using your smartphone to see what you are buying electronically, and can define the level of inflation day by day, 1 week later, and tell you immediately where we are. So actually, we can know much better about the economy if we know about the technology and if we use it in a right way. Inflation is changing, but there are certain things which are not changing with inflation. And this is a definition. It is when you are, for example, inflation is paying 130 for an haircut, which used to cost 90 when you had hair. So basically, we are in a situation where you pay more for less. Now, there is no personal experience there. Huh? So we are in a situation where people pay more for less. But this is it. This is the world of today, and this is how we have to do it. Because the world of competitiveness is going to be changed by technology. Let me recap. This is the technological highway as we know it today. It is composed of those companies, the Facebook, the Alphabet, the Microsoft, and all those people. What is really interesting is the following, is that they are powerful because they have the technology, they have the platform, they have the data, and of course, they have the markets. This we know, and this was done in the past. What is really different today is that instead of staying on the highway, these companies are branching out. They are exiting, they go elsewhere. If you are looking, for example, as a company like Amazon, Amazon is now a world leader in cloud computing, and Amazon is going into retail food. If you are looking at a company like Alphabet and Facebook, they represent now 75% of digital advertising. If you are looking at Tesla, it's a world leader in batteries. You are looking at Apple, and remember, I am Swiss. Apple last year became the largest manufacturer of watches in the world. Last year, Apple has manufactured 25 million watches. The entire Swiss industry was 24 million watches. Now, of course, our watches are a bit more expensive, but that's a detail. But we are seeing something extraordinary because nobody in the Swiss watch industry was expecting that the biggest competitor would be one day Apple. So it can come from everywhere. And the same happened with electronic payment. If you are looking at companies like Tencent, Ant Financial, which is a payment company from Alibaba, Ant Financial is 16 times larger than PayPal. Ant Financial is a company which is processing 6 times the level of transaction than Visa. And they are all going this way very quickly, and you have Libra in the pipeline. We are in a world where the entry barriers are collapsing one after the others. And this is having an impact on everybody. Now, the strategy of this company is to lock the customers into a relationship where you have a proprietary ecosystem made of products, of services, of payment. The name of the game becomes very rightly, you have the choice, provided it is ours. So sometimes you have two nationalities. You have the nationality of your country, and then you are an Apple person or a Samsung person. But once you are in one world, you cannot escape. You are inside. And because of that, the business models are changing. It means that the competition can come from totally different horizons. This is a cartoon, Calvin and Hobbes, and this little boy is always worried about who is under the bed. Is there any monster under the bed? And what is really the issue is to define who will be our competitors tomorrow. And sometimes nobody knows where they will come from. And most probably they will come from domains and perspectives that we don't expect. The second thing is, where will they come from and where will they go? I mean, we will see again that a company like Amazon and the others, frankly, there is no limit to the industry sectors where they can operate. This is changing completely the rules of competitiveness, and it means that the companies are living not as long as before. In 1958, the average life of a company was 61 years. According to McKinsey, in 2017, it was 18 years. Companies are disappearing very quickly today, and if you are looking for the forecast, that 75% of the companies of the S&P may disappear during the next decade. Companies have a shorter and shorter life. Now, it doesn't apply to everybody, but they have a shorter life. So we need to adapt to this kind of environment, and we need to understand what are the answers of the issue with technology. Number one, in the end, no matter what is the technology, there is always a product. And this is this little man in a pizza parlor which is answering the phone and who is saying, sorry, we cannot email your pizza as an attachment. We are in a situation, at the end of the day, there is always a product, no matter what. Number two, there is a time for innovation, but 95% of competitiveness is excellence in implementation. A good example of that is the next time you take a plane and you sit down in this plane, maybe you will think about me, and you will tell yourself, the last thing I want to see in a plane is a pilot with a sense of innovation. I want not to have somebody who says, I have a new plane, let me show you what I can do with it. No. You need excellence in implementation and matching the deadlines and matching what people expect. This is competitiveness and nothing else. The second answer of the issue is energy. Technology is a high consumer of energy. And this is processing power, and this is storage, delivery power, consume a lot of energy. Even the self-driving car, because of the technology inside, consume 20% more energy than a normal car. We have even had this very good example, you know, with artificial intelligence and robot, there was this AlphaGo, this world champion playing Go. And this machine was consuming 440 kilowatt an hour and became the world champion. In front of the machine was the world champion as a human being. And this human being, the world champion, his brain is consuming, our brain is consuming 20 watt an hour. Only 20 watt an hour. So we are very efficient in this way. Now, it's true, some people are also saving energy on this brain consumption, but still, I think it is important to keep in mind that technology consumes energy. And then unemployment. Big question mark. Where will it go? What will be the impact? Perhaps one day in the unemployment office you will have this, a robot telling somebody next. Maybe one day later you will have another robot speaking to another robot. But we need to know what is the life expectancy of a robot. It's not very big. It's perhaps 4 or 5 years. So here we will have job changes, but it will have an impact on employment. The unsolved issue is going to be for technology the size of these companies. This is the size of Facebook, Apple, and where they get their revenues. And of course, the big problem is that they have the platform, as I said, and they have the services. So there is a big debate which is starting and which will go also in the US election, which is, should we dismantle those large companies? Should we break them down, as it was done in the US with the oil industry, as it was done in the US with the banking industry? And if you do that, for example, and you remember I mentioned that Amazon is a world leader in cloud computing with Amazon Web Services. If you put Amazon Web Services on the market today, you will raise $438 billion in market capitalization. This is 3 times the size of IBM. It will mean it's going to be the largest IT company in the world. And the debate about should they be broken down is going to be a debate with us for quite some time. The other aspect of this large technology company is that they create a black hole economy. At the center, we have technology and money. At the periphery, you have innovation made by smaller companies. And you have a lot now of smaller companies in the kingdom which are innovating. But what is going to happen is the following. Those large companies are going to attract all the small ones, and they are going to buy them, and they are going to absorb them. And it means that the question becomes, can small companies become big companies quickly? Or every time are they going to be bought out by the large one? Those of you who are using Siri as voice recognition on Apple, Siri was invented by an entrepreneur, a young guy in Norway. He was working on voice recognition. And he was working hard, and one day he received a telephone call from Steve Jobs who said, your company is fantastic. I buy it, $75 million. What do? You go back home, somebody is waiting for you washing the dishes and asks you, how was your day at the office? And you say, nothing special. Just Steve Jobs called me and said, I want to buy the company, $75 million. And you say, what did you say? You say, I said no. And then you get killed. So basically, all these young people, are being given such an amount of money, they sell. But as a country, you do not get the big company of tomorrow. And you don't get the technology of tomorrow. And the other problem we have is taxes. You know that the system of taxes today, the one of the European Union, of the OECD, is really the following. 3 basic principles. Territorial system, which means pay taxes where the revenues are located. First principle. Second principle, transparency. Everything should be declared. Third principle, equality of treatment between global companies and local companies. The 3 principles are going to be the same almost everywhere and are going to be pushed by the international organization like the OECD. The big question is going to be, how do you tax digital companies? Digitax. Should you say, I am going to tax you on your revenues, 2-3%, like the UK or France, independently of how much money you are doing and where it's done? Big debate which is going to come in. Next thing is corporate ownership, which is changing because of all that. And here we are redistributing the cards. What you are looking at is companies today globally managing their competitiveness with a lot of cash. They use it for investment, number one. They use it for dividends. We have never seen so much dividends on the market today. They use it for share buybacks, like company like Cisco. They buy back their shares. So the share price is going up because you buy back your shares all the time. And finally, consolidation of the market, mergers and acquisition. We have never seen so many M&A, mergers and acquisition on the market. What you have to keep in mind is M&A stands also for murder and assassination. You buy and you kill. But the consolidation on the market is taking place, and is taking place very quickly. And the other big players, and you know it, is the sovereign funds. And when you're looking at the list of the sovereign funds, many in different countries, of course you have many here in the kingdom, I have put Sama and PIF, but this is the list. You have also ADIA. This is the list of the sovereign funds money available in Asia, and I put China plus Hong Kong. And you have the two other big players. Number one is, of course, Norway, and number two is Singapore with its two sovereign funds. The big difference is that in the past, the sovereign funds were very much looking as an objective to have profits. Today, there is also an objective of corporate governance. The Norwegian funds is saying, I'm not going to invest anymore in a company, for example, where the chairman and the president is the same person. I am going to exit from a certain number of industry sectors like tobacco. They are becoming very active. They say how they are going to vote in the shareholders' assembly, and they are going to report every quarter what they are doing. This is something which is going to happen very much. The other consolidation of the market is financially on what we call the index fund. We are in a world of index fund, exchange trade fund, mutual funds. Three companies are mastering the market, and this is BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Together, they are in the board or in the ownership of 88% of the S&P 500. They are everywhere. And this impact in the company is going to be huge, because actually we find this company again and again, and this is a problem. What happens if your shareholder is the same if you are also a competitor to another company? And therefore, we are in a situation where you remember the black hole economy, now we have a black hole finance. Same story at the center. You get technology money, you have the index funds, and what happened? Everybody is investing in the same companies. Everybody is contributing to the overcapitalization of the same companies. Why do we have Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, more than $1 trillion in market capitalization? Because the index funds are all investing in the same companies. And if you want to have a proof of that, this is a market capitalization of the largest company in various industry sectors. Look at technology. Technology today is twice larger in market capitalization as banks, as pharma, as oil and gas, and all those. So clearly now we are in a situation where we have a high concentration of the market, and the question becomes very rapidly, the next big systemic risk, is it coming from the banks or is it going to come from technology? Is the risk going to be there that we will find the domino effect? And that is going to be a very big debate in competitiveness, because probably people are going to have to tackle that. So the question becomes rapidly, what is the new business models? And the new business models is linked to technology, and I repeat, technology is about automation, number one. Number two, connectivity. Number three, sharing, C2C. And number four, location. You know where everything is and where everybody is. Then you take all that together and you have convergence, and you take all that together and you have mobility. Once you have that done in terms of technology, the next stage is to look how quickly it's evolving. The revolution in technology in the past took place over 10,000 years. Agriculture, writing, printing, steam engine, fine. Within one lifetime, my lifetime, I have seen those four huge technological revolutions: personal computing, internet, mobile telecom, artificial intelligence. One lifetime. I'm going to tell you something I never said to my students at the university. I have written my PhD thesis on a piece of paper and with a pencil. Now, if I say that to my student, they are going to say, wow, my God, this professor is much older than he looks like. But we were in a different world. And this came in one generation very quickly. And from there, people are going to have a different business model. And you have to ask yourself, what is a sale? You open the dictionary, the Oxford English Dictionary, and they tell you a sale is the exchange of a commodity for money. But if you look at the world today, you can have sales without the exchange of a commodity and without money. If you are looking, for example, no money, a lot of sales are made on Facebook, etc., Google, where you exchange personal information, not money. Even more interesting, you have a system of no ownership where today you have companies which are not selling a product, they are selling the use of a product. For example, Microsoft Office 365, Netflix, Spotify. You cannot buy the product, you cannot buy the movie, you can only buy the use of the product. The streaming. This is completely new. This is new because you get another trend. You look at all these companies here on this chart, Tesla, Deliveroo, Uber, N26, We. What do they have all in common? They are successful companies, but they don't make any profit. They have become actually non-profit companies. And they are immensely successful to a certain extent. So we come into this kind of situation where part of the market is the little guy saying, here, we don't do anything, we are just attractive to high-risk investors. But it means we have to rethink the model also in the perspective of the consumer. The consumer is going to say, you know, I have a lot of products. I have too many products. Actually, you can ask yourself, how many products do you have in your home? First question. Second question, how many more can you bring in? Ask yourself, for example, what do you do with your old cellular phone? Maybe you are like me, you put them in a drawer and you pray that they will disappear. But they don't disappear, they stay there. And I think this is a problem. People say we have to look at trash again. We have to look at how we manage the recycling of energy. We have to look at how we can extend the life of products, especially food. And we have to go into the circular economy, like IKEA, who says, I'm not going to sell a bed anymore or a mattress. I'm going to lease it and take it back and sell you another one. This is pushing our consumption into a very different perspective. This is where I live, on the Lake of Geneva. I am in Rouen. I'm not in the castle, I'm just next door. And actually, we have a center which is a recycling dump. That's where people recycle every weekend. And what is striking there is that a lot of the products which are going there are not broken. They are unwanted. I bought a new TV. I don't know what to do with the old one. It's working. I put it in the recycling dump, and somebody else will take it. This is becoming a very big thing, from recycling to exchange. And actually, it is because at a certain stage, Steve Jobs came and said the following: with the iPad, it will simplify all the tasks that you never had to do before. So somehow, we have created new needs, but now we have to make sure that we manage those new needs. And then, of course, we have the climate challenge. I will be very brief on that one. First, global energy consumption, plus 2.7%. Carbon intensity, minus 0.9%, which means that the carbon emission total is 1.8%. I just want to put that in perspective. With the Paris Agreement, we said it has to go down by 2.9%. So we all know about these numbers. We know who are the big polluters of the world: China, the US, India, etc. What I think is a real challenge, the real equation, is that on one hand, we need to have sustainable development, efficiency, regulation, and changing the behaviors of people. But on the other hand, we need to preserve the living standard of people. We need to fight poverty, aging, and to accept that we will have more people in the world. And all this will have an impact also on the climate. This is something where a lot of technology can be used to solve the problem. And of course, the question is how much green is green? And when you are looking at the situation, we have identified the problem, we start the action. The outcome is a real issue because we don't know how to certify the action. We have too many certification issues. We have too many people who are saying, this is good, this is bad. And somehow we will move in a situation where we will have impact analysis, where we will have to define what works and what doesn't work. And for that, it may take time and international cooperation. Now I'm going to go to the last part, which is on if the market becoming emotional. What is very important in competitiveness, we have found, is competitiveness measured, but competitiveness perceived. How people are perceiving things. One day I received a very unusual advice from a banker who said the following. He said, "Professor, please don't confuse me with facts." And I was very surprised. I said, why is he saying that? He said, what I am interested in is not only the facts, how I'm interested in what people perceive and what people believe. And I think it is quite interesting. This is the president, and this was done by the Washington Post during the first 1,000 days of his presidency. President Trump has written 9,274 tweets, which is an achievement. 266,000 words, extraordinary. He has made 13,435 false and misleading claims, outstanding. And in addition, which is absolutely extraordinary, when he was elected, he had 41% approval rate, and in December, he had 41% approval rate. Nothing has changed. And you have to ask yourself, what is the message? What does it tell us about how people react? You remember Al Gore, the vice president, had a book called An Inconvenient Truth. And this is a cartoon. Everybody goes in front of the cinema. And then you have another movie called A Reassuring Lie, and everybody is there. We need to better understand the opinions of people. A German writer, Schopenhauer, one day in a book called The Art of Being Right, said the following. He said, few people know how to think, but then he added, but everyone wants to have an opinion. We are in a world where everybody wants to have an opinion and wants to be heard. And the technology is reinforcing this trend. A good excuse, suppose at the end of the week you are leaving the office and instead of going back home immediately, you stop and you have coffee and tea with some colleagues. And then you come back home a bit late and somebody is waiting for you and say, where have you been? And you have fast to find an excuse. And then you are saying the following, I was going out of the office and suddenly there was this big flying saucer coming and pulling me out. They suck me out in space, and then after a certain moment, they bring me back home. And the person at home is going to say, come on, this is a stupid excuse. I don't believe you. And you are going to say, wait, you go on Google and you type abducted by aliens, and you will find 6.9 million entries. So you are going to say, look, I was not alone. So we are in a world where whatever is the opinion of people, you go on internet and you will find people with the same opinion as you. And you will be convinced you are right, even if you are completely wrong. And this creates an animal spirit on the market. If you look at a company, GM and Ford together, 15 million cars produced. Tesla, 380,000 cars produced. And if you are looking at the market capitalization, GM plus Ford are smaller today than Tesla, $102 billion. This is crazy. And how can we explain that? Because people have an opinion and have expectation on the companies. And we need to manage that because otherwise people will not understand. And the question is, can it be controlled? And if you are looking at how far we can regulate, big story, GDPR, which is protection of general data protection regulation, very big thing. And I think that this is the access to private and public data is going to be a key issue, not only in Europe and the US, but everywhere. And we have to know how far you can go, and this is a little boy in school who is saying the following: before I write my name on the board, I need to know how you are going to use it. I think more and more people are concerned about the use of their information. You have, if you use Apple, an application called Calm. Calm is when you are stressed. Calm is an application to relax you. And in this application, the winning thing is something called Once Upon a GDPR. This is Peter Jefferson of the BBC reading you the regulation of GDPR, and apparently after 10 minutes of reading it, boom, you go to sleep. I think you can try that with a lot of regulations. So basically, people are looking at something immensely complex. And the complexity, you will find it also with the Apple Media Service Terms and Conditions. This is the Apple Service Terms and Conditions. Do you read it? No. At the end, they say, please read the agreement carefully to confirm your understanding and the agreement, and click Agree. You click Agree and you don't read it. You do the same thing for the cookies. You click Agree. And you are right, because there is 6,806 words in this declaration. This is crazy. As a means of comparison, the US Declaration of Independence is 1,337 words. So really, we are killing this because we are over-regulating. And this over-regulation does not reach the purpose, which was to bring some security to people. So let me conclude by looking at the impact on the mindset. Competitiveness is made of a mindset, and the structure is country value system, your value system, and of course, society expectation. This defines your mindset. This will define also the corporate culture. And when you are looking at that, the first thing is to look at countries. This is China. This is Nanjing Road in Shanghai. They went into Nanjing Road and they asked people, what are the keywords which reflects best your value system? And the answer made by Gallup was, work hard and get rich. 68% of the Chinese in a poll said, work hard and get rich. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you are going back home, and you ask your children in China, work hard, get rich, what about you? Do you recognize yourself in this value system? I cannot speak for the kingdom, but only for my country now. And I can tell you, when you ask them, they will tell you, actually, forget about the first part of the sentence, which is uninteresting. All I want is to become rich without working too much. And you have an entire generation of quick money. My students, they come to see me and they tell me, Prof, if we are not a billionaire at the age of 26, we are a failure. I say, maybe not. But they have in mind all these kids, Apple and the rest, who become billionaire very young. Very dangerous. And the second thing is you go to the next generation, the smaller one. And you say, work hard, get rich. Your older brother, older sister says, I don't want to work hard, I want to get rich. What about you? And they will say, actually, I don't even want to get rich. And you say, what? You don't want to work hard, you don't want to get rich, you don't want to build your own house? And they are going to say, but Dad, Mom, why do you want me to work hard like an idiot to build my own house while you have already done it? All I have to do is just to wait. So we have an entire generation who says, why should I bother? This has a big impact on competitiveness. And because of that, this younger generation is a youthquake. It's a generation which is characterized by meism. It's a generation where it's self-fulfillment, narcissism. This is the selfie generation. They spend their time taking pictures of themselves. They go in holidays. They don't take picture of the monuments. They take picture of themselves. They could save on the travel. Basically, they escape reality because they spend on average 10 hours and 39 minutes in front of a screen. Actually, it has been said 90% of them check their smartphone within 15 minutes of waking up. If you do it yourself, it means you are young. 65% prefer losing their car rather than their phone. Why? Because the car belongs to the parents, so you don't care. But this is a new attitude. It's an attitude, they have less affiliation, political and religious, but they are concerned by the state of the world. Henry Ford said something very correct. He said, actually, a business that makes nothing but money is a poor business. The new generation is expecting more than just money results. They want to contribute to society. They want to contribute to the future of the world. They want to contribute to environment. And then they have a strong sense of entitlement. They are demanding. They are intrusive. They do not understand that something has to remain confidential. If you are looking, this is what should not be done. This is Alan Greenspan. Alan Greenspan was the chairman of the Fed. One day he was called in front of the US Senate to testify. At the end, the chairman of the commission said, "Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think we understand everything." And Alan Greenspan says the following, "Mr. Chairman, if I seem unduly clear to you, you must have misunderstood what I said." And I think that this kind of attitude, the younger generation, they don't understand. They want to know everything. And finally, they have a different concept of ownership. They believe that free is cool, that you should not pay for something. And, I spend a lot of time trying to tell at IMD and the university, my students, don't you think that there is no free lunch? Don't you think that at the end of the day, somebody is working hard, should have a salary, should go back home in order to feed the family? They say, yes, Prof, we agree somebody should pay, but not us. So they want somebody else to pay. But I found the answer with Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, who said the following: if you think that a product is free, then you are the product. And they start to understand the value of their own personal information. So I think we are in this situation where Peter Drucker said something very true in terms of competitiveness. He said, today changes in society have actually a deeper impact on companies than changes in management. In management, we haven't discovered much, but society is forcing on us a lot of changes. And I think this is what will change. And of course, the companies have to adapt. And the way they are adapting is the following. I wrote a book on that. When you start your life, in most companies, you are a tiger. You are a tiger, you are working hard, you are devoted to company achievement, to work success. Actually, you work more than 60 hours a week. You are a company animal. You are very mobile, trying to find something to kill everywhere. You are success-driven, fully dedicated. You start as a tiger. But then, after a certain period of time, from this state, suddenly what happened? You get married, you get a family, you get a home, you get a mortgage, and from a tiger, you transform yourself into a cat. Which means that you work 40 to 60 hours a week, you are driven by personal achievement, you are mobile, but with a home base, you say, during the week I do whatever you want, but the weekend I want to be back home, and I want to see the family. I am interested in work-life balance. And finally, after many years, another transformation occurs, and you become a dinosaur, where basically you said, I want to work less than 40 hours a week. I am interested in life quality. I am totally immobile. Don't touch me, don't move me, forget about me. And finally, I am interested in life balance. And I think that if you mismanage that in a company, you lose the best people. And a lot of the younger generation, they are already cats. Some are tigers, but they sometimes move to be cats immediately. So we have a change in mindset and attitude. Keep in mind, number one, competent people are not necessarily competitive people. You can be highly competent and highly useless in a company. The difference is a mindset. Number 2, resilience in competitiveness in the name of the game. Epictetus said the following: it's not what happens to you that matters, but how you react to it. The capacity to react on events makes the difference. People expect decisions. This is Henri Frédéric Amiel. Henri Frédéric Amiel is a Swiss philosopher. We have one. Here he is. And Henri Frédéric Amiel said the following. He said, you know, the one who insists on perfect clearness before he decides never decides. And I think it's a very strong statement. I started also many years ago in my life, I worked with Bill Hewlett of Hewlett-Packard, and he used to tell us, the founder used to tell us, if you want to be 100% sure, you will be 100% late. There is a moment you have to jump, you have to make it. One day the CEO of a company told me the following: the big problem I have in my company is that we study a good idea until it becomes a bad one. Spend enough time on any idea and it becomes a bad one. We have to be careful about overthinking. This is Ralph Guldahl, he's an American golfer, Norwegian origin. He was a Tiger Woods of his time. He won everything, 2 US Open, 1 Master. And one day he did something very stupid. He said, my God, I am so good, I have to write a book explaining golf. He wrote a book, Groove Your Golf, explaining everything. And from the day he wrote the book, he didn't win one single tournament anymore. He won a golf ball. Incredible, huh? Picasso, fight complacency. Success is dangerous. One begins to copy oneself. It is more dangerous than to copy the others. It leads to sterility. The worst thing that happens in life is when you repeat again and again the same thing. And that's where the competitors are coming in. Chinese proverb, the impossible might be possible. The person who says it cannot be done should not interrupt the person doing it. How many times people are doing things which we believe are impossible? Do not believe that because it is impossible they would not do it. Raise ambition. We were discussing about that. This is Salvador Dali. He said the following. He said, at the age of 6, I wanted to be a cook. Then he added, at the age of 7, I wanted to be Napoleon. Then he added, since then, my ambition has grown steadily. And I think it is collective ambition, not personal one, which matter. And this is a very big thing for the future. We have to stay in touch with people. This is Franklin Delano Roosevelt when he was re-elected the second time. And he said the following. He said, a good leader cannot go too far from followers. And I think this is very important. We have a lot of companies where you have a leader who is a leader alone. You have to stay close to the followers. And you have 2 types of powers. You have the leaders who implement, who achieve. But now we start to see new type of powers, which is the icons, the Greta Thunberg, the stars, the influencers. They are people who exemplify an idea, but they do not implement, they do not achieve things. And we have to deal with these people also. So let me conclude. The recipe of success is the following. Number 1, you need to have, in competitiveness, the management of efficiency. Number 2, the management of change, solid, because it changes all the time. Number 3, the management of complexity. The world is complex. We should not make it more complex. We should have imagination, answering the question, why not doing it, and not why we do it. We should have energy. Let's do it now and not tomorrow. And we should have a commitment. Let's do it together. I should be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And to conclude, 2 things. Number 1, John Maynard Keynes said the following, which is a huge problem for all of us. The real difficulties lies not in developing new ideas, but actually in escaping from the old ones. I think it's true. We are always a victim of history somewhere. Number 2, everybody can make a change. Everybody, everywhere can make a difference. This is an African proverb. And the African proverb says, if you think that you are too small to make a difference, and then they add, well, then you have not spent the night with a mosquito. A mosquito can make a difference. Everybody can make a difference. Third thing, let's beware about the law of unintended consequence. With the best will in the world, sometimes we take a decision in competitiveness and it goes the other direction. This is Old Delhi, colonial times. And they had a big problem in those days. They had too many cobra snakes in the street. So City Hall had a brilliant idea. They said to everybody, actually what you do, you cut the head of the cobra snakes, you bring the head of a cobra snake to City Hall, and we give you a reward. The problem is that our Indian friends are very clever. So what they start to do, they start to breed cobra snakes in their kitchen, cut the head, and bring it to City Hall and say, give me the money. So at City Hall, what they did, they canceled the scheme. And what the people did, they put all the cobra snakes back in the street. And at the end, you had more snakes in the street and less money in City Hall. This is an example of the law of unintended consequence. And I want to conclude and to finish with this one. Timing is everything. Sometimes the problem in competitiveness is not if it is right or wrong, but when it is right or wrong. If you are looking at Laker Airways, August 1978, this was the first low-cost airline. First low-cost airline. It went into bankruptcy. If you are looking at Newton, Apple, the first personal digital agenda, August 1993, the first one on the market, he almost went into bankruptcy. John Sculley, the chairman, had to resign, and Apple almost disappeared. Today, personal digital agenda and low-cost airline are part of our daily life. The first time they were on the market, it was wrong. So we can learn two things from that. Number one, never, ever launch a product in August. It's bad luck. Second thing, and it was said very well by Montaigne, it is very wrong to be right before everyone else. So timing is the name of the game. And I'm sure that in the kingdom now you are at the right timing, you are at the right moment, and I wish you a lot of success. Thank you very much indeed.